Hello everybody, I'm B-Bake from Baker Brothers and Revelations Primo here with another episode of Ralph Bakshi-a-thon, or Ralph Bakshi-thon, whatever you want to call it. So, my last review we talked about Fritz the Cat. It was the first X-rated cartoon and it was really successful with its adult humor and its satire on the hippie culture. Although I felt mixed about it, I still gave it a pretty positive review, and it was very successful at the time. However, I didn't really address Ralph Bakshi as an animator in that review. One, because I forgot, and two, because, well, I feel like it's better to introduce the animator with a film like Heavy Traffic, because Heavy Traffic really is a Ralph Bakshi film. It's his own characters, his own animation, and his own original idea. Fritz the Cat was pretty much all our crumb in terms of its characters, its drawing style, and its story. So Heavy Traffic, I think, is the best way to introduce Ralph Bakshi. So, let's get started. Ralph Bakshi grew up in the streets of New York, which is kind of funny because he was born in Israel to Russian Jewish immigrants. Well, it's not really funny, it's just an interesting fact, but that's not the point. The point is that he grew up in the hard city of New York, right when things were getting really bad, not that they haven't been bad, but during the era where he grew up, there was a lot of bad things, and especially being a Jewish boy during his upbringing was probably the worst thing to be. He saw the hardships of life and moved from different neighborhoods a lot, to black neighborhoods, to Italian neighborhoods, all across New York. So he got to see a lot of different aspects of life and always wanted to present it with animation because he used to see a lot of animated films like Looney Tunes when he was a little kid. So he went to the Manhattan School of Industry Arts after graduating from high school and got a degree in cartooning, went over to work for Terry Toons until their closing in 1968. Which at that time, Ralph Bakshi had just got the rights to make the Fritz the Cat movie. What I really admire about Bakshi's style, which I'm going to address almost in every film because it seems like from this point on, this type of style would continue, he always seems to put realism and music together. He chooses things that exist in the real world and combines them with music. And you can see a lot of this stuff in Heavy Traffic where it doesn't really discuss much about plot and characters, but it shows you images to music and you sort of fantasize and drift away. There's a really famous quote by Ralph Bakshi. He said, if you're not daydreaming to music, then you're not listening to good music. And I stand by that quote. So every time I'm listening to a CD by a band I like, I hope I'm daydreaming because I don't want to be listening to bad music. But anyway, I think that's good. Let's talk about the actual movie Heavy Traffic and the history that went into it. I briefly touched on Fritz the Cat history, so I feel like I'll touch a lot on Heavy Traffic's history. So after Fritz the Cat's financial and critical success, the studio and the producer of the movie got a lot of money, which Bakshi wanted but was not given and had to fight for it. He fought for it so much he said he was going to pop the producer in the face. So when he went to go to the studio the next day, they locked him out. He was very furious. I don't know why I'm telling you this, but it's just kind of an interesting story. So Bakshi had to fight hard for his vision of Heavy Traffic. And he went through months of not getting the money or his royalties for Fritz the Cat. So this movie is made on a very low budget for an animated film, that is. It still has a good budget, but not as high as most animated films will. So something you'll notice in here is that a lot of the animation is painted on photographs of New York City. One thing for budgetary reasons, but another reason because it is sort of a style. It's an aesthetic that I think Ralph Bakshi wanted to present. That not everything has to be animated, but only characters are, which I think is pretty cool. And speaking of characters, in order to tell the plot, I think I gotta talk about the characters. First, we meet our protagonist, Michael. There's not a lot that's interesting about Michael. The only thing that is he's a normal character in a crazy world, so we can attach to him and relate to him. But other than that, he's not really the most inspiring or interesting character. His live-action actor is a lot more interesting. But when you're dealing with these circumstances, it's good to have a down-to-earth and regular character.
Funky Woody razzmatazz. Well, Zoot, how about razzmatazz up $1.25 dance bus? Alrighty, cat's booty, hot licks, and jazz a boogie zoobie.
Then there's my favorite character in the movie, Angie. This guy is a total douche. He is one of the meanest and most hardest person I've ever met. He's a mafia boss, and he's just so cruel to everybody. But when he does something mean, he usually gets what he deserves in the end.
Your mother is a goddamn crazy bitch, Michael! Mother of God. Thank God she needs glasses.
Then there is Ida, Michael's mom and Angie's wife. She's Jewish, and her and Angie are always fighting in every scene they're in together. Sometimes it gets brutal, but it's exaggerated in that sense. And then there's one of my other favorite characters, Carol. Oh my god, Carol is very sexy. I know that sounds weird, and I usually make fun of people who are attracted to cartoon characters or video game characters, but my god, I find Carol to be one of the most sexiest cartoon characters alive. She is just brilliant. I love her animation, and I really dig how she's a strong black woman who's also good looking. And as she says to Michael,
boy, as long as Carol got this here good thing and this here left, she don't need anything else unless she wants it. And child, I don't want it.
So now that I talked about the characters, I guess I should talk about the plot. And again, I put quotations over plot because this has less of a plot than Fritz the Cat, which is hard to believe because Fritz the Cat barely had a plot to begin with. But that's what you expect from a Bakshi film. Plot doesn't matter. It's all about characters, and it's about the animation and music. Plot is the least important thing, but I guess I will try to explain it. So, it's just pretty much about Michael's life in New York and his parents fighting, and there's something going on with the mob, and him meeting Carol, and Carol trying to get money. Nothing really adds up in terms of plot.
Look at me, goddammit, when I'm talking to you.
You can stick it, Mario.
But that's okay, not everything has to. The thing about this movie is that it doesn't necessarily have a great story, but it just has a lot of great scenes in it. There's a ton of scenes that involve music and characters that I think really work, especially with Angie and Ida. I think one of my favorites is when Angie's walking around pissed drunk and he stumbles into the Godfather. It really seems like there is something wrong with him. And everything, all the animation around him just indicates that this man has been drinking way too much booze. And the music makes you really sympathize with him. Another amazingly heartbreaking scene is when Ida is staggering around city, drunk too, and is looking through old pictures. She's so sad and depressed, and the music really makes you feel so sad for this character. Again, it really works.
And who is this beauty? Oh my God, it's me.
However, again, I gotta talk about the bad things about this movie. One of the things are the filler scenes. Like with Fritz the Cat, there are some horrible filler scenes, and for a 77-minute movie, that's not a good thing. One of the things that bugs me is this scene. Like, what is it in here for? Why? Why was this scene included? It has no purpose. And what is it? I can't tell. God, experimental films stink sometimes, and there's a lot of violence in this movie. And again, the violence sort of matches the tone, but Jesus, this gross. It's like an exploitation film. Well, it kind of is anyway. So, overall though, I really do like this movie a lot more than Fritz the Cat. I do like Fritz the Cat, but this one I think is a lot better in terms of its characters, its animation, its story. Well, story, I guess I'll put in quotations. It just feels alive and with it. It doesn't feel forced, and there's not a lot of cheesy moments, and a lot of it feels like real drama presented in an animated picture, and it's a great experimental film about animation. I highly recommend you watch this, but try to find a DVD of it, because the YouTube copy is just awful. The picture just doesn't look good, and some of the parts are missing. But if you can find it on DVD, I'd highly recommend it. And another thing to note is that Ralph Bakshi was one of the few animators to have 2 back-to-back films to be successful since Walt Disney. At least at that time he was. So overall, if you're playing pinball, like Michael, just drift out, and I think this movie will really make sense to you, because that's the whole thing about it. It's a man whose mind is drifting into outer space, and everything in his life is colliding into one thing. Overall score, 4 out of 5. Check it out. It's pretty insane.
Surprise, sugar. You're on. What you gonna do about it? I mean, you're on for a few days till I hook it up.
Yeah, sure, of course. Right on.
Right on. Sugar. Don't you mean right on? Well, ain't this some shit?